Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Inspired Action, where we dive into the most pressing leadership challenges and hope to inspire you to take a more coach-centered and people-focused approach to leadership. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and it's time to get started with our three amazing guests for today. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Inspired Action. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and I'm here with three amazing guests today to answer this question. What are the biggest sources of friction at work, and how would you address them? But first, let me do a quick introduction to all three of our guests, beginning with Susan Halaut. Susan is the owner of Susan Halaut Coaching. She is a leadership and communication development coach, as well as a marriage and family coach. Her unique skill set includes creating unique experiences for work teams to grow in performance and cohesiveness, and helping families with strategies to become more purpose-driven and effective. And we know we need that in our world. Larnzell Harper, with over 15 years of experience, he is a seasoned professional in public transportation, talent development, and employee and community engagement. He is a self-proclaimed transit geek and is passionate about creating learning opportunities to engage others through relationship building and storytelling. And on another note, Larnzell, I've got a story to tell you about being a transit geek, but we'll save that for another time. Jen Schraff, owner of JSC Coaching and Consulting. Jen is a seasoned ICF certified leadership and executive coach, helping leaders focus on what matters most so they can lead effectively through chaos and change. She brings years of experience across industry and organizations in program management, learning and development, training, recruitment, and large-scale event management. Thank you guys all for being here. We are going to jump right in. And Susan, you were the lucky one to go first. And I'm going to ask you this question. What are the biggest sources of friction at work, and how would you address them?
I truly think the biggest friction at work is assumption of behavior or assumption of motivation of behavior. Assuming that someone is mad at you because they're short, they speak in short sentences without a lot of fluff in the beginning, needing a lot of details to do a job or answer questions or whatnot, and feeling the other person feeling like they're being criticized. Those assumptions can really cloud how we treat them, because I believe it's John Maxwell who once said that we treat people how we see people. And so if we see them as arrogant or short or disrespectful or never happy with status quo, then it's really going to cloud how we're treating those people and our coworkers. It's really important to see how we all fit together in a team, because those people who need more answers than others, or ask more questions than others, they're really going to have a lot of data when you need to make those important decisions in your business. Whereas those who are short and abbreviated may make decisions very quickly, and they may not be the most beneficial decisions made for your company. Whereas if those two can work together and really communicate well together, then those decisions can be really made from a much healthier space.
Yeah, so true. And I know you do a lot of work with DISC, right? And so
Yes,
some of that certainly aligns there.
for
Um,
sure.
but I think when we think about assumptions being one of the most energetically charged limiting beliefs that people possess, right? Because
Yep.
there's history and
There's
patterns of
history,
behavior, established history, which affirms that's how they're going to show up at a meeting or the
for
next time I try
sure.
to ask a question, right?
And it gives permission for other people to treat other people poorly without any basis for that whatsoever. So then you start creating this culture in your company of disrespect and the ability or the permission to treat people poorly, and that's never good in a company.
Yeah. So in a
Or a
short
family.
nugget, what do you do to deter some of that?
For me, I use DISC.
Yeah, right.
I use this
Awareness, right? Yeah.
awareness, absolutely awareness of how each person is wired uniquely, what they bring to the table, and learning to appreciate what they bring to the table. Appreciation can really deter contempt, because it's hard to appreciate and have gratitude for someone and at the same time hold them in contempt or be contemptful in your behavior towards them.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. Let's jump over to Larnzell, and I'm just gonna say probably one of the sharpest dressed professionals you will come across. I've interacted with this guy a few times now, and he is doing some consulting work and in transition and looking for his next perfect opportunity. But if you guys get your eyes on him, don't let him get away. Larnzell, what's the question? What are the biggest sources of friction at work and how do you address them?
Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate that compliment. And thank you, Susan, for giving me a nice segue to kind of compliment what you just said, especially the part about just the established cultures and then just treating people poorly. And a lot of what I'm about to say definitely is rooted in awareness. For me, I'm based on what I'm reading, what I'm hearing from colleagues, the kind of the friction at work right now is when judgment is kind of baked into the structure. And what I mean by that is sort of this, it's not this friction is showing up in an org chart, but yet many of us who are applying for positions, some of us who are in our roles now, is sort of that structured judgment, especially when it's dealing with hiring and evaluations. Now, this isn't just about one bad boss or that one opportunity or that one job that we thought we were going to get and pass us up. No, this is much deeper because we're talking about the structure that quietly is sidelining experience, is overlooking talent, and it's actually rewarding familiarity over value. And with that, it's sort of like, in a sense, it's sort of protecting this structure, it's protecting the bad bosses, but it's also increasing the opportunity for missed opportunities. So, like, take AARP. In 2023, they did a report where they said that nearly 2 out of 3 adults over 50 kind of believe that there was some type of judgment that was given against them in the workplace. And it's kind of one of those things where it's not just feelings, but we have to kind of look at the friction in the structure. And it's something else too. It's kind of like when you're looking at having these various teams, whether it's different generations or different roles or different experiences, the friction is coming in because you can't fix that with a motivational quote. This is something that a retreat isn't going to do. So, what do? It goes back to increasing our awareness, making sure that we're able to not just name the people who are kind of participating in sort of treating people poorly or kind of not having this type of work culture, but are we able to kind of identify the pattern? And when we identify that pattern, it's like, are we noticing, well, what roles are going to certain employees and what roles aren't going to certain employees? And I just feel that when we develop this awareness, now we're able to kind of have like become a self advocate. And with that being a self advocate, that's where we're kind of able to just get out of more so finger pointing, but just bring it back to performance.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I think what I'm hearing in that, and probably if I would give you another few minutes, is that's the opportunity to really lean into some courageous conversations, which beats quiet resentment every time, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Larnzell. Jen, let's jump over to you. What would you add as it relates to the biggest sources of friction at work and how would you address them?
Yeah, so I think what I would, the way that I've approached this is thinking about what I hear from some of my clients. So when I think of friction, which I hear about a lot, the interpersonal relationships, of course, are big ones. But there's a few things I've identified as, I'll say, sort of themes that I see. The first is loss of control. So uncertainty at work, uncertainty with where am I working? Do I have to come to the office today? Am I allowed to work at home again? Who's going to be there this week? What's happening? There's this sense that people are feeling really out of control. And when you feel like you're losing control, there's heightened sense of awareness of a bit of a panic and anxiety can set in. So I think that a big result of this is that people are showing up not really in their best way. They're showing up anxious. They're not feeling like they can work with other people like maybe they used to, and they're really struggling. Another one I'm seeing is people feeling taken advantage of. So, I'm hearing a lot of, as I'm sure all of you guys are, uh, work never turns off. It's 24/7. There's always something else I need to be doing. I never get this release to my personal life. And the third one that causes, I would say, the most friction is handling change. It's just constant now. There's always a new change. There's new changes in systems. There's new changes in processes. Sometimes there's a leadership change. Often there's a leadership change or two. And so when I think about those as sort of the top three that I hear from most people, the first thing that I sort of look at is, if I'm their leader, what can I do about people who feel that they've lost control? And the first thing I'd say is, don't forget that these are people coming in to work every day, right? We're all messy, emotional individuals. So there's the listening side, asking them what's happening for them. And then there's the skill building side. So rather than just sort of throwing skills at someone that you think they need, find out what's actually happening there. Why are they feeling a bit of a loss of control? There's the basics, I guess, giving people more decision making authority if they're feeling out of control, clarifying their roles and expectations. There's a lot of confusion that can happen. And who owns what? How are we actually working together so that in all of this chaos, so that things are clear, making things more clear. For those that are feeling taken advantage of because there's too much happening and they can never get to the end of their to-do list, maybe you need to help them, audit their meetings and their work. Is there something that they can be told to ignore? What's the least important for them? Can they delegate, and do they have the skills to delegate? That's sort of where the hard skills come in, and you can be saying, this isn't a meeting, this can be an email, and model that. So, maybe you're saying to your team, look, I think everyone really needs a break, and I can't give you a break necessarily with the hours in the day. So let's look at what can be a meeting and what doesn't have to be. Let's really start to look at how we work together. And then the last bit, which is handling change, because that is a constant, talking to your folks to increase transparency, finding out really what's the problem for them. Is it adapting to the change? Is it understanding why it's even happening? Is there a communication issue there with the people wondering, like, why are we even getting a new leader? What's going on? What's the restructure or what's happening? And then again, helping them break into manageable pieces. So it might be a given that you know how to do that. But remember, in times of change, people are a little thrown up in the air, and they might forget to just sort of root down and handle things bit by bit.
Gotta
Piece by piece.
have that anchor, right? We got to pull people back down to earth.
Mm.
A lot of times, I think the biggest source of friction is right up here, right? Before in all of what you guys are talking about, that's where it starts, right? Because we've already rehearsed what's going to happen, the observed patterns of behavior, change that I don't like, the people that I don't like, the people I do like, and I'm going to be biased towards them. So all of those things really start in our heads. And so I think on kind of that train of thought, how do we encourage people to manage their thinking or the conflict that can exist within their own minds so that doesn't translate to how they're showing up and how they're engaging with other people? Whoever wants to take it, jump in.
I think a great question to ask ourselves when we become more self-aware is that true? Is that true? So when I have that thought about that person, is that true? We there's this thing called a thought spiral. And I know in marriage, I've had it with my husband. I do a thing, and then he responds a certain way, and then my thoughts start spiraling like, wow, he's not being very nice to me, and wow, how did I become married to somebody who's not very nice to me? And oh, I don't deserve to be married to somebody who's not very nice to me. this is bull. Like, I don't like this. And I mean, the thought spiral can just keep going, and we need to catch it sooner than later, because as I said before, we treat people how we see people. And so if I begin to start allowing my emotions and my thought to cause me to see my husband as this person who's mean to me and not having my best interests at heart, then it's certainly going to erode how I treat him in our marriage. And also, you know, we're empty nesters now, but having children in the home and having them see their parents treating one another that way instead of learning to manage their emotions, because I believe all of this starts at an elementary level. Because, you know, I love training high schoolers for that very reason, because I feel like I'm rising up healthy husbands and wives into our society. And so that starts at home, though. No matter what you tell them, they're going to duplicate your behavior. And if you are treating someone in your own home that you say that you love poorly, because of the thoughts that you're allowing to ruminate in your head, then that's not allowed. You're not self-checking yourself. And that's our first responsibility, is to self-check ourselves. So I would say that the biggest question is that true?
Yeah. Is that true? Jen, Larnzell, what would you add to that?
I would add that just asking yourself, you know, what part do I have to play in this? Friction, have I created, you know, it takes two kind of thing, and owning some of that, whether or not you agree with how the other person's acting or what the system changes or whatever. It's what can I actually own, and taking responsibility around that. So it starts with asking, you know, what's my part in this, and what can I do differently, rather than blaming and looking outside of yourself.
I think that's such an important piece. And to piggyback on, I love the thought spiral, right? In coach training, we talk about kind of how we escalate limiting beliefs to that gremlin message, right? We can work it all the way up if we spend time thinking about it enough. And then Jen, to your point, I just think that's so important from the standpoint of having the awareness to take ownership, because the only thing you're going to change in a relationship, in a marriage, in a boss direct report kind of relationship, in a peer-to-peer relationship, is the way you show up. You are never going to change the other person. And I think there's some misconception that we have the power over other people. Now, we can manipulate, we can threaten, we can do things, but we have to take ownership and responsibility for our own thinking and our own emotions in order for our actions to change, right? Larnzell, what would you add to bring this thing home?
To bring it home, I do this a lot with myself. I just ask myself, is this true? Is this their reality, or is this my reality? And when I do that, I tend to find out maybe sometimes I've put too much more into the situation than what really exists. And so how I get through that, I let time. I kind of just sit on it. If there are emotions, I let them die out. And that kind of cliche, we've heard it our whole life, sleep on it. It really has a lot of power when you actually enact it.
Man, I love that. And I think kind of bringing this all full circle, friction isn't necessarily the enemy, it's an indicator, right? And that's where that awareness piece kicks in. It may show us where clarity is missing. It shows us maybe where accountability is slipping. And I think when, as leaders, we can lean into friction or conflict with openness and courage and intent, then it stops being something that can really weigh us down, whether it's our team, our organization, our relationship with our spouses, our kids, whatever it is. And that's what inspired action looks like, right? We take the heat and turn it into fuel for growth, trust, and results. So thank you guys so much for being here today. Be sure to join us on LinkedIn every Thursday for the newest episode to come out, and anytime here on our YouTube channel at MindFit Coaching. Thanks again. We'll see y'all soon. That's a wrap for another edition of Inspired Action, the Leadership Forecast. We're so grateful for our guests today and the impact they're making with the work they do. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel to watch the longer version of this episode, and be sure to like, comment, connect with, and follow me and each of our guests. You'll find all of our links in the caption of this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in every Thursday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for new episodes.